It was the 4th of July, and the whole street was out grilling. I didn't know any of the neighbors, just nodded politely when I passed them. Most of the houses here were owned by retired folks. The one on the corner had a faded veteran flag hanging from the porch, and 12 folding chairs set up in the yard. When the fireworks started, that place was the most crowded. I'd only moved in 2 months ago, single, no dog. No one really talked to me. Around 7 p.m., I was sitting by the kitchen window eating a hamburger, watching people across the street set up a firework rack. The sky was darkening, the sound of cicadas mixed with loud music from someone's speaker. I wasn't planning on going out, but when I realized there was no water in the kitchen, I decided to check the backyard pipes. As I stepped out the back door, I caught a strange smell like wet soil mixed with something rotting. I figured some animal might have died nearby. I crouched down near the pipes in the corner of the yard, but didn't see anything wrong. Just as I stood up, the ground beneath my feet gave a little like something underneath had pushed against the surface. I stared at the patch of grass. The breeze was barely there, but the blades were shifting wildly, swaying side to side like someone was stepping on them. I knelt down and touched the soil. It was damp, soft to soft. It hadn't rained in days. This wasn't natural. I went back inside and grabbed my gardening trowel, then carefully started digging. The first scoop came up thick and sticky. By the third, I hit something hard. I thought it was a rock, but when I scraped at it, I saw a smooth, pale surface. I brushed the dirt away. A small piece of white was exposed. At first, I thought it was porcelain. But then I saw the tooth. I froze. My fingers went lower and found the outline of cracked lips, then a half-opened eye. The face was swollen, bloated, twisted beyond recognition. I stumbled back, falling onto the grass, heart pounding so hard it drowned out the sound of the fireworks. My stomach lurched. I tried to stand, but stepped on another soft patch, another bit of turf that lifted at the edge. A second piece of pale skin peeked out from under the grass. I ran back inside, locked the door behind me, and bolted to the bathroom. I threw up everything I'd eaten. My reflection in the mirror looked paler than the wall, forehead soaked with sweat. I grabbed my phone to call 911, no signal. I walked into the living room, one bar, then none. Outside, a firework exploded with a sharp crack. I jumped. The burst of light lit up the backyard perfectly, the patch of dirt I had just dug up, flat and clean, like it had never been touched. The mud was dry. Nothing was there. Even the trowel was gone. I didn't believe I'd imagined it, but I didn't dare go look again. I turned, went to my bedroom, locked the door, and wedged a chair under the handle. The house was dead silent, except for the muffled pops of fireworks outside. At 2 in the morning, I heard footsteps on the lawn, soft, slow, like bare feet pressing into wet ground one step at a time. I didn't move. I held my breath. The footsteps stopped at the back door. The handle turned. There was no creak of the door opening, just a faint vibration, like something was pressing against the wood. I climbed out of bed and grabbed my golf club from under it. As I approached the door, I heard a soft knock, fingertips tapping wood, once, twice, 3 times. I cracked the door open a sliver. Nothing there, until I looked down. Muddy footprints started at the lawn and trailed all the way to the kitchen. I don't remember falling asleep. But when I woke up the next morning, every door in the house was shut. The footprints were gone. I rushed to the backyard. The patch of earth looked untouched, grass perfectly trimmed. I called the police. They came and looked around, but didn't find anything. One officer patted my shoulder and said, "Might have been someone's buried pet toy you dug up by mistake." I didn't argue. But after that night, I never stepped into the backyard again. Not until a week later, one morning when I went outside to grab the paper. Right there, at the edge of the lawn, was the trowel, perfectly clean, stuck upright in the ground, angled toward the spot I had dug. I stepped back and shut the door. Since that day, I double lock every door before bed and close all the curtains. The house has been quiet ever since, but I can't shake the feeling that under that grass, the eye is still open waiting for me to dig again. July nights in Los Angeles are suffocating. The 4th of July fireworks hadn't even started yet, but the street below was already packed with people. I lived in an old apartment building downtown. Cracked walls, stained ceilings. The place had history. I rented a small one-bedroom on the 6th floor. Nothing fancy, but cheap. Around 7:30 p.m. I was on my balcony, smoking a cigarette, listening to kids laughing across the street, firecrackers popping in between. A man was shouting about hot dogs, car horns blaring in the chaos below. The whole block had the rhythm of a heart attack, loud, relentless. My head was pounding. I stubbied out the cigarette and decided to hit the corner store for something cold. I stepped out and got into the elevator. The button for the first floor had been broken for weeks. You had to press 2 and walk down from there. This elevator was always acting up. You press a button and wait forever before it moved. I stood inside under flickering lights. The corners of the walls were plastered with old moving service ads and a creepy, childlike drawing of a ghostly face. The elevator shuddered a little, and just before the doors closed, I heard a heavy thump from upstairs, like something heavy had fallen. I waited, thinking someone might get on, but no one did. I pressed the close door button. As soon as the doors shut, the lights went out. Total darkness. Couldn't see my own hand in front of my face. I slapped the buttons. Nothing worked. I was about to curse out loud when the lights suddenly flickered back on, and the elevator began descending. I let out a breath. But just as we hit the 5th floor, it stopped. No chime. No door opening. Just silence. I pressed the buttons again. Nothing. The emergency number was taped to the wall, but I had no signal, not a single bar on my phone. I stared at the crack between the elevator doors. That's when I heard footsteps outside, slow, heavy ones. Like someone wearing soaked shoes. They stopped right at the door. I didn't make a sound. The footsteps just stayed there for a minute. 2 minutes. Then they slowly walked away. I thought it was over until the elevator started moving again. But instead of going down, it returned to the 6th floor. The doors didn't open. I hit the 2 button again. This time, it went down. But when the display hit 3, it jolted hard and came to a sudden stop. Then the doors opened on their own. The 3rd floor hallway was pitch black. No sound, no one there, but I could see water. Pools of it on the ground, leading from the dark hallway to the elevator. I tried to close the doors. Nothing worked. Water began dripping from the ceiling, one drop at a time, landing on the elevator floor. I listened to the dripping, and then I felt it, something breathing by my ear. Not you. The voice was barely audible, like it was inside my skull. I screamed and slammed every button I could. The doors finally shut, and the elevator dropped one more level. Then opened. 4th floor. A girl was standing in front of the doors. Long black hair, blue dress. Soaked to the bone, water pooled at her feet. She didn't move. Just stood there, slowly. She looked up. Her eyes were hollow. Her lips moved slightly. "You're not me." I tried to close the doors again, but they wouldn't budge. I backed into the wall. She stepped inside, one slow step at a time. With each footfall, water crept into the elevator, rising around my shoes. She came close, so close her face nearly touched mine. I shut my eyes, didn't move, didn't breathe. When I opened them again, the elevator was at the 1st floor, doors wide open. Outside, people walked past as fireworks lit up the night sky. I stepped out, turned back. The elevator doors were still open, empty inside. No water. Nothing. I ran the whole way to the corner store. The clerk was restocking sodas. He looked up and said, "You okay? You look like hell." I shook my head, paid, and left. I didn't take the elevator back. Climbed every step to the 6th floor. When I got there, a man was sitting in the stairwell, smoking, skinny, head down. When he saw me, he gave a small grin. "You saw her too?" "Huh." I didn't answer. He nodded, stamped out his cigarette on the wall, and said, "Every year on the 4th, someone sees her. 3rd floor used to be where a kid drowned. Elevator takes you to her." I rushed back to my apartment and locked the door, deadbolt, chain. That night, fireworks thundered outside, but I heard something else. Another thump from above, same as before. Like something heavy falling, or something waking up. I didn't think much when I booked the seaside cabin. I just wanted to get away from the fireworks and the crowds. Maine seemed like the perfect choice. Quiet, empty beaches. Nothing but the sound of waves and wind at night. That kind of loneliness was exactly what I needed. It was the 4th of July. I arrived around 3 in the afternoon. The cabin sat at the end of a gravel road, weathered but sturdy looking. Inside, it was all old wooden floors and worn-out furniture. The windows opened straight to the sea. The tide was going out, and a few seagulls were pecking at small fish stranded in the seaweed on the sand. I dropped my backpack, made a cup of instant coffee, and sat on the porch to soak in the sun. There were other cabins nearby, but none too close. I could occasionally hear kids yelling in the distance. The sea breeze carried a salty, fishy smell, not pleasant, but not unbearable either. By evening, I took a walk along the beach. The receding tide had left behind a stretch of wet sand, littered with strange rocks and driftwood. I wandered farther than I meant to, not noticing the sun had already dipped below the horizon. By the time the sky began to darken, I turned back. That's when I noticed someone standing not far behind me. They were dressed in a dark, long coat, hair messy. I couldn't see the face. I figured it was just a local fisherman and gave a polite nod. No reaction. I kept walking. A few steps later, I glanced back. They were still standing in the same spot, completely still. When I got close to the cabin door, I heard a soft crunch behind me, like someone stepping on a shell. I spun around. The beach was empty. No one there, no footprints either. I stared at that patch of sand for a long time before going inside and locking the door. That night, the wind picked up, rattling the windows. I turned off all the lights except for a small lamp in the corner of the living room. Around 11, someone started setting off fireworks near the shore. I stood by the window for a while, watching them burst over the ocean, lighting up the sky like brief flashes of lightning. And in one of those flashes, I saw a shadow in the sand, just a short distance from the cabin. Standing perfectly still, back facing the sea. I didn't pull the curtain. I just watched. Every time the sky lit up, he was closer. When the last firework exploded, he was standing at the bottom of the porch steps. I instinctively stepped back. The power cut out. The entire cabin plunged into darkness. I ran to the kitchen, grabbed my phone, turned on the flashlight, and aimed it outside. No one was there. I stared at the steps, cold sweat trickling down my face. No signal. Wi-Fi dead. I knew I wasn't getting in touch with anyone that night. I didn't sleep. I sat on the couch, phone in hand, listening to the wind and the ocean. And sometime in the middle of the night, I heard soft thuds above me, thump, thump, thump like footsteps. But this cabin didn't have a second floor. I didn't move. I just stared at the attic door across the room. It was half open, swinging slightly with the breeze. Around 5 in the morning, the sky started to lighten. The sound of waves softened, and everything outside grew still. I stepped out cautiously. The beach looked normal. The tide had gone out again, the sand wet and clean. But right there, in the sand outside my door, was a trail of footprints, deep, clear, leading straight to my door. No prints leading away. I stared at them, frozen, until a voice behind me said, "You saw him last night too." A middle-aged woman stood at the door of the neighboring cabin, a mug of coffee in her hand. I nodded. She walked over and said quietly, "I used to stay in that cabin. Same thing happened to me. He only shows up after the tide goes out. He won't come inside, but he'll stand there until you look at him. What happens then?" I asked. She shook her head. I didn't look a second time. I moved out. I packed my bags, skipped breakfast, and left. As I drove back toward the city, I passed a stretch of misty wetlands. In the rearview mirror, way out in the shallow water, I saw a small black figure, still standing there. It was the afternoon of July 4th, and Liz and I were setting up the grill in her backyard. I had just moved to this little town, from Chicago, than 3 months ago, and this was my first time experiencing the local 4th of July celebrations. The heat was suffocating, the kind that made you not want to talk, but Liz kept laughing as she brushed sauce over the ribs, telling me there'd be an amazing fireworks show later by the lake. Practically the whole town would be there, she said. We drove to the lake around 5. The streets were packed. It wasn't a big town, so seeing that many people in one place felt almost festive. The lakefront was crowded with families, kids running around. Someone had set up speakers blasting music, and beer cans were already littering the grass. We found a spot that wasn't too noisy and sat down to wait for nightfall. The fireworks started around 8:30. First a few scattered bursts, then full-on waves, red, green, purple, exploding across the sky. I got lost in it for a while, until Liz nudged me with her elbow. "Did you see that?" she whispered. "What?" "That guy. Over there. He's been standing there the whole time." I looked where she was pointing. At the edge of the tree line, far from the crowd, stood a man. Too far away to make out his face, just a tall figure, perfectly still. The fireworks burst above him, but he didn't flinch. Didn't even seem to notice. "Maybe he's security," I offered. "Security wouldn't just stand there, and not like that. It's weird." I was about to brush it off, but then she added something that made my skin crawl. "He was there when we got here. Hasn't moved, not once. I've been watching him." I muttered a curse under my breath and decided not to look at him again. The fireworks ended and people started packing up. We headed back to the car. The man was gone. On the drive back to Lizzie's place, she was quiet. She was driving, and I was in the passenger seat, trying to shake the tension. "Probably just some weirdo," I said. "Every small town's got one, right?" She didn't reply until we got inside. "I'm not feeling great. Gonna take a shower. Grab yourself a beer or something." I nodded. She went upstairs. I flopped onto the couch and turned on the TV local news. They were talking about how this year's fireworks were bigger than usual. No incidents reported. About 30 minutes later, I heard a click upstairs like a door shutting. I called out, "Liz," no answer. Probably just in the shower, I figured. Then, footsteps on the stairs. I looked up. Liz was standing at the top. "Done already?" I asked. She didn't respond, just stared at me. The light hit her face. Her eyes were hollow, her expression off, pale in a way that didn't feel right. I stood up. "You okay?" She nodded, slow and stiff, then turned and walked back upstairs. Her footsteps were heavy. Too heavy. A chill crept over me. I bolted up the stairs. The bedroom door was open. The lights were on. The bathroom door was shut, and I could hear the shower running. I knocked. "Liz," no reply. I pushed the door open. It wasn't locked. A wave of steam rushed out. The shower was blasting hot water, but the bathroom was empty. No one inside. I stumbled back, trying to breathe, when my phone buzzed in my pocket. A text from Liz. Ran out to grab ice. "Be back soon." I nearly dropped the phone. Who the hell had I just seen? I saw her, at the top of the stairs. She looked right at me, walked into the bedroom. Shaking, I went back downstairs and collapsed on the couch. 10 or 15 minutes later, Liz came through the door with a bag of ice. "Why didn't you text me back?" she asked. I stared at her. Her face was normal, bright-eyed, flushed from the heat. Not a trace of what I saw upstairs. "You really went out?" I asked. "Yeah, we were out of ice. I just ran to the gas station." "Why?" I didn't say anything, just nodded and took the bag from her, stuffed it into the freezer. I didn't want her to know what happened, mostly because I wasn't sure what had happened. That night, we had drinks and chatted like normal, but something felt off, like there was something watching me from her bedroom. I didn't go back upstairs. I couldn't. I stayed on the couch the whole night. The TV on, not to watch, just for the noise. The next morning, Liz asked why I slept downstairs. "Too hot upstairs," I said. "Wanted to be near the fan." She laughed and called me sensitive. But later, when I went into her room to grab my phone charger, I saw something on the floor. A trail of damp footprints, starting at the edge of the bed, leading straight to the bathroom.